there's all these sort of tax incentives. You can make a movie for $1 million and then get 60% of that budget back. So you have $1 million looking movie after the incentives come back was made for $400,000.
Wow.
So,
Hi, welcome back to How Much Can I Make? I'm Mirav Ozeri, and today I'm joined by filmmaker Ben Sottak, who just finished shooting his very first feature film. It is called Hallowarrior, a take on Halloween. I was introduced to Ben by Robin Feldman, a producer that we featured on our February 11th episode. It's really a good episode. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. Anyway, back to filmmaking. Plenty of people dream about making movies. It's sexy, it's nice, but very few actually do. Only about 2.5% of NYU grads go on to make feature films. And the number is even smaller with UCLA and Columbia. So the fact that Ben has actually reached this milestone is a big deal. So let's just dive right in and hear what it really takes to start a career in film. First of all, thank you for doing it. I was really looking forward to it.
of course, sorry I was a little hard to track down. It's
It's
been a
fine.
busy couple of months, but I'm glad we were able to connect.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really curious to hear your story. So why don't we start by telling us, how did you get into filmmaking?
I went to NYU Film School, knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, wanted to be a director, going in, made a bunch of short films, as one does in film school as director, but those were all sort of like student films. And then when I graduated, I needed to find a job, and a friend of mine recommended me to be a post-production assistant on like a big studio comedy. It was like an MGM barbershop movie with Ice Cube and Nicki Minaj, and he was like, "Do you want to do this?" It's at the time in 2015, I think they were offering me like $750 a week, which I was like, I'll live like a king on that. That's amazing. It's like $500 after taxes. But that was 2015, and I was, fresh out of college and living in East Harlem. So I started doing that. All the like technical stuff that I've learned over the last couple of years, from starting as a post PA and working my way up to an apprentice editor and an assistant editor. Even though it wasn't the path that I wanted to be on professionally, I still wanted to direct. It's actually really helping me out with my direction now.
So your dream is to be a director.
Yes.
That's what you want to do. So I looked, by the way, the commercials on your website, you directed them or just edited them?
Yes.
You directed them?
Everything on my website I directed.
How do you get gigs like this? It's not that easy.
So it's very, very new, and I considered myself a director and a filmmaker because that's what you have to do for like the last 10 years, but it really wasn't until the last 3-4 months that have gotten paid as one. But essentially, I always wanted to make a feature film, and I did finally after many years. We shot in November, and then we actually shot a little bit of footage for it last week, so now it's officially like...
And you wrote it?
I wrote it, yeah. I wrote the first draft 7 years ago. I've been lucky that even though I've worked professionally as an editor, even though, I've just been sort of like self-generating a lot of my stuff, I've gotten representation because of my scripts and because of my short films. So my manager's been sending my stuff out over the years, and, we've tried to get this movie made for like 7 years, and finally just through private equity pulled it together and made it happen this past fall.
You're doing a horror film, right?
Yes.
Why
Yes.
did you choose that genre?
I love it. At film school, I went into film school loving all types of movies, but not really having like a focus for the types of films I wanted to make. Tried out comedies, tried out trying to do something a little bit more dramatic. Found out that I didn't really have that interesting of a life story or something that interesting to say, so I had to kind of get creative with it. And I think horror is like the genre to be able to be creative in for not that much money. Like if you have talented people, and I'm lucky enough to work with really talented cinematographers and makeup and production designers, you don't need a lot of money. I would say horror relative to say like fantasy or sci-fi or like historical epics, the things that we think of when we think of like cinema and things being epic, I think horror is relatively inexpensive because people in a house, the house can look like a house and the people can look like people, but then you spend the money on one thing, which is like the monster. You don't need like a whole bunch of other crazy extras or production design. It is relatively inexpensive genre to work in. And really, I think it's like one of the only genres that is still expressive. Like it's not a literal genre. You can make moonlight look blue and cold, which is not what moonlight looks like. Blood can be bright red. It's almost experimental in that way. It's almost like an experimental painting. So that's why I love it. And you don't have to spend that much money for people to be like, oh, that was a really cool effect. How did you explode that guy's hand? And then you tell them like it's just makeup artist with a fire extinguisher hose of blood into a fake hand and two people on either side pulling fish. And people are like, oh, that looks amazing. I'm like, yeah, it probably costs like $30 worth of materials at Home Depot, but we hired talented people and they made it look cool.
So when you wrote it, were you constantly thinking, oh no, that would be too much money to shoot a scene like this, and you change the scene?
I wasn't being too budget conscious when I wrote it, but I was thinking like scale wise, what am I good at and what can I do with my first feature? The first third of the movie is just this one actress alone, so that already was a budget saver.
Right.
Most of it takes place in one house. That was a budget saver. And then when the people do show up, the rest of the cast is only about 8 people. But we allocated the budget, I think, smartly on good actors and then putting them in cool makeup and giving them some cool kills.
But they're SAG actors. That's not so cheap. You have to pay them scale, right?
Yeah, you have to pay them scale, and if you go overtime, you can feel when you go over whatever the allotted time is on set. Everybody gets kind of stressed out because it's like every minute is like that's money. There's just so much chaos, and like the minute you show up to set, the clock starts ticking, and then you have 12 hours to shoot. And our movie, it's all set in one night, so we were shooting overnights. So for a month and change, we would show up at 4 p.m. to work and leave at 5 a.m. and go sleep for a few hours and then come back and do it again. And there just wasn't time to like sit around and kind of ponder and be like, yeah, what if you said it this way? Like you're under the gun and everything's going wrong and there's blizzards and like gear isn't working. So you're just like, let's just shoot it. Like if we shoot anything.
It must feel great when you hear the actors say the lines that you wrote that came out of your mind.
It definitely is. Feels even better when they improvise and come up with better writing than I did. That also feels way better. You're like, yeah, because I get to take credit for that.
So what was the process like? Tell me. You send them the script.
My lead actress, Millie, is phenomenal, and she and I connected about the project like 5 years ago. She liked the script. Every year I would try and get the movie made, and we would get a little bit closer, and then something would fall through, and it would be like, oh, maybe next year. But I would just keep her in the loop. I'd be like, hey, just checking in. I think it's gonna happen. Here's the latest script. And she was very sweet and would write back, be like, oh, I love the new script. Keep me posted. Finally, when we were about to go, she and I met up, and we didn't get to do a rehearsal, but we'd at least met in person ahead of time. She showed me her script that she had broken down, and I showed her mine, and we just talked a little bit about the characters. She's so talented, and like she's won a Tony.
She comes from theater.
And, yes, from she was Matilda on Broadway. Yeah, she was just incredibly prepared, which was really what I needed.
So you knew she came from theater and she won a Tony and all of that, so she must be good. But how did you know that the other people will be good?
The second lead, Ajani, I had worked with them before. They were in my short film. I just knew that they had a different process than Millie. Like Millie's very analytical and works with her acting coach and is really trained and like knows how to break down a script. And like you could be like, Millie, I need you to just start crying like in this field and it's cold, and she'd be like, all right, and she'd just do it. Ajani is like a movie star and like somebody who you point a camera at them and they look incredible, and like if it's a different sort of process, and it's sort of like more a conversation thing of like getting them to a place where they feel comfortable opening up. The other actors, AJ and Shannon, I'd just seen their movies. They're a little older than me and they've worked on a bunch of films, so I just kind of knew to trust them.
Since it's happening in over one night, do you shoot in sequence?
No.
That's very difficult.
It's totally difficult. What saved us, it's one house, one night. Every scene has they carry this prop into this room and they fire this crossbow, so then they can't use that crossbow, so then they have like a knife in this room. It was a continuity nightmare. Fortunately, we had an amazing script supervisor, a gentleman named David B. Jacobs, who's brilliant. He just kept me honest the whole time. Like we'd be shooting a scene that we'd started like 2 weeks earlier, and he was like, that's supposed to be over there, and this door was closed when she came in, and this prop is, but he was the only reason that the movie actually like cuts together. And then you have stuff like there's the continuity of props, continuity of makeup and costume, and then there's the eye line debate. There's the concept of like the 180-degree line where like you have to have the eye lines consistent of like where each character is looking. Otherwise it gets confusing and like the audience has a hard time following. And doing that where like we'd shoot one part of a scene 2 weeks before and then like the other part, but one of the actors had left, so it's somebody just like reading lines. It's a testament to the crew that like all the eye lines in this movie are on point. Okay.
How many shooting days in total?
20.
That's not bad.
It sounds not bad, and then you show up at 4 p.m. and then it's like all of a sudden 4 a.m. and you're like, where did 12 hours go? And we've already pushed we've pushed the scene to the next day because we couldn't get to it. It's not bad, but I thought I had written a pretty like easy first not easy, but like I'd set myself up for success with the first feature, but it's set in after sort of civilization collapse, so there's no running power. So it's nighttime, but all the light has to be motivated by candles. So like the house that we were shooting in, you could kind of see into every room if you flipped around. So you had to reblock things, like little things like that. 20 days sounds like a lot of time, but it went very fast.
The pre-production took how long?
I've been in pre-production on this movie for like years. In the pandemic, like shot a proof of concept. A year and a half before, we were gonna maybe possibly shoot it on film. So like we did like a film test. I'm glad we didn't. That would have been a fucking nightmare. It's been years of me location scouts to Pennsylvania, to like Maryland, to like places that we didn't even end up shooting in. Storyboarding, talking with my DP, trying to get the cast on board. It's like, it's years, and you have to really love the script and you have to really love doing this, and that's why a lot of people
fall by the wayside. Yeah,
exactly. And even after we wrapped, and I share this anecdote all the time, but like we were basically like putting up the crew at grad student dorms up in Syracuse. That's where everybody was staying. And like the day or two after we wrapped, there was a Variety article, kind of like a first look announcement announcing the film, and like, got so many texts and messages on Instagram like, wow, congrats, like must be so nice, blah, blah, blah. Well, even while that was happening, like me and my partner, Emma Jane, who produced it, like we were just cleaning out rooms and scrubbing toilets, and like there was no rest. It didn't feel like, wow, you've made it.
Right.
Like it's like, nope, it's still like the same nonsense as when I was shooting my student films, but on just a bigger scale. It like scratched an itch, and now I want to do it again.
Okay, so now you come to the editing. Were there scenes that while you were shooting, you said, oh, I'll fix it in the editing, you were compromising?
Yes, not by choice. There were definitely moments where it was like, we're just going to have to figure this out in post, but it wasn't because of like laziness. I can give you an example.
Okay.
There's a scene in the movie where a character with like a lighter and an aerosol lights another character's head on fire.
Yeah. Oh my God. Horror is right.
we were planning to do it practically, meaning all the actors playing these kind of like characters who are getting killed off are professional stunt actors, and we were going to light this girl's head on fire for real. It was as planned out as we were able to get it. It involves like contacting the local fire department,
oh my
working
God.
with a fire team that makes like a special cream that goes on to makes it safe. And then of course the actress has like, she like sent her reel, and she's like, I've been lit on fire like 10 times. Like the first thing in the reel is like her on fire. Like all these stunt people, the first thing in their reel is like them being lit on fire. They're crazy. And we found out to like do it practically, to do it the way it was going to take like 8 hours for like one shot.
Oh no, that's impossible.
To do it all safely, and like me and my partner, who's my producer, we just kind of made the executive decision of, we can do this, we can try and figure this out with VFX. I basically shot it in a way that was like, we can either do this well with VFX or we can cut around it and it'll still be effective and still have a payoff. But that was disappointing because I wanted to safely light someone's head on fire. It would have been spectacular. But the decision was made because that was like our second to last day, and we were owed so much coverage for the rest of the movie. We had so many like incomplete scenes, little moments where like if we didn't get those, the movie would literally, it would be like a cartoon where it's like insert shot here because we just didn't get it. So it was a compromise, but it was one that I'm glad we made, and I was thinking ahead to just like, look, I can cut around and compromise that, but like I can't compromise like elements of the story that are just going to be like incomplete. Like we need to go shoot that stuff, and we can't waste 8 hours on one shot.
How long do you think the editing will take?
For independent films where there's no like set studio, like it needs to release this date, it's general rule of thumb is like all of post-production, so not just the edit, but like VFX,
Right.
color, sound design, it's usually like 9 months to a year after principal has wrapped. It takes a long fucking time. This is not a long movie either, like gonna be like basically an hour and a half, but
And
it's
and
so much
still
footage.
a year, 9 months to
Yeah.
wow.
I started cutting at 7 a.m. this morning, emailed with you once, and then I looked at the clock and I was like, oh, it's seven. Like, I was like, oh, are we still talking? And I'd just been working on like the opening, like title sequence, but you want to take your time with it. And I like want to understand the footage. I want to be able to, like, when I watch the final DCP of the movie, never be like looking and be like, this insert, did we have a better version of it and I just didn't use it? I want to know it inside and out, and like even for a movie that's not that long, it takes time to sit there and watch and try things. I'd like to at some point screen it before we've locked the cut so that people can be like, hey, this doesn't make sense. This wasn't, so before it's like too late and then you're like, well,
Yeah, that would be terrible. How did you get the money to produce a feature film?
part of how we were able to get the budget that we got, and a lot of filmmakers do this, is by stacking like state incentives. So we shot New York State, we shot upstate, and then we shot in Onondaga County, and there's all these sort of tax incentives. You can make a movie for, you have to get the equity up front, but you can make a movie for $1 million and then get 60% of that budget back. So you have $1 million looking movie that you only, after the incentives come back, was made for $400,000.
Wow.
So it helps mitigate your risk.
How did you learn all of those ins and outs?
I have good producers who I work with who I like literally ate like. There came a point where I got like so frustrated like a toddler when we were trying to like put this together, and I was like, can you explain this to me like I'm 4 years old? Like slowly, what does this mean? Go to the chalkboard, draw it out, and they were nice enough to do that.
Robin told me that you got distribution.
No, we have sales agents, and they pre-sold a few foreign territories for us. But we don't
Wow,
have
that's
that.
a success.
Yeah, no, I mean, and a lot of that was based on the strength of the cast. But no, we don't have distribution yet, and we won't until we start exhibiting the film.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Where will you exhibit it?
Ideally, we premiere at a festival. It's not necessary because we are lucky enough through my representation at Cinetic to have both foreign and domestic sales. So they could, in theory, just take it to market. But it is important to me that once the film is complete, at least try to screen at a festival, because I think it would be a nice reward. You know, it's a holiday movie. It's a Halloween movie. So like, ideally, if it does get a release, whether that's VOD, ideally it would be released in October around that time.
Will you get to see it on a big screen, or because it was shot digital, it will be streaming?
Movies shot digital do get theatrical releases. We don't know what kind of release it will get, but I will get to see it on a big screen. When you go in to do like the color grading and the sound mix, you watch it on like a big movie theater calibrated screen, which is great. And then the part of why I want to play at a festival is because that is, for a lot of independent filmmakers, the only sort of venue they have to like watch something on a big theatrical
Which is the Dream
screen.
Festival you want to get into?
I don't want to say because I don't want to jinx it.
Okay. That's very smart. Very smart.
I'm superstitious about it.
I'm the same way. Anyway, I would like to know, what is the biggest challenge for a director?
The biggest challenge as a director is appearing to be calm, even when nobody else is prepared and we have the wrong prop crossbow or the wrong prop gun, and like the makeup effect isn't working, the actor doesn't know their lines, everybody's complaining, there's a blizzard. Robin, when I gave good advice when I was going into pre-production, that, you know, the attitude comes from the top down. So she was like, you have to look calm, you have to look confident. I would say that's the biggest challenge. I feel like I'm decent at that. There's other parts of directing that I'm pretty bad at, but I am good at least appearing calm and disassociating through the experience until I get home and I'm like pouring myself a whiskey and like, what the fuck just happened for the last 15 hours on set.
What advice would you give somebody who want to become a filmmaker? Do they have to go to school?
You definitely don't have to go to film school. You definitely don't have to pay to go to college. You can make connections by going and working in the industry and not going into student debt and going into debt trying to fund your own films. But I mean, this is like annoying advice, but it is true. Like, if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to make films with whatever resources, connections, crew, props you have available. For me, like working a day job in editing and earning my healthcare through that, and I was still always, whenever I could, making films, and they were just getting better and better, you know, whether it was like little spec commercials, short films.
Right. So how many short films did you make before you tackled the feature?
Probably like 15 or
Wow.
I mean, if you're counting like music videos and
Right.
stuff like
Of
that,
course.
like since I like wrote the script every year that it didn't get made, I was like, this sucks. Like this, we should have made it this year. But I'm actually like, I'm grateful that it took as long as it did because like in that time, I was just like honing my craft. It's been said before, there's no prodigies in filmmaking. It's not an art form like where you can just be naturally gifted. Like it just doesn't happen. And you have to make a bunch of bad to mediocre to good films before you start to realize like, okay, this is what works. This is the mistakes I've made. So my advice is like, you gotta start shooting stuff. And to that end, and this was something that was in my head while we were shooting, the difference between somebody who says they want to make a movie and doesn't, and then Steven Spielberg or Paul Thomas Anderson, or even just like me, Joe Schmo, who like made a film, is like, there's going to be so many obstacles stacked against you doing it, like permits and weather and like acts of God and actors who don't know their lines and like all sorts of crazy shit. But the filmmakers that you respect are the ones that like had all that shit thrown at them. Spielberg trying to like make Jaws and the shark was sinking into the ocean in
Oh, I
Nantucket.
didn't know.
And yeah, it was a fucking nightmare. The people who are filmmakers just kept shooting anyways. And there were so many days where like the old me would have shown up to set and like something disastrous was happening and I would have just been like, let's just fucking go home. But during the film I was like, we're still shooting something. We got to get like at least one of these scenes down, and some of the stuff that's in the cut are from those days, and I'm glad we just kept shooting. Oh, here's another piece of advice.
Yes.
I see a lot of filmmakers who say too much, post on social media like big project happening, watch this page, and then nothing ever happens. And I've almost done stuff like that in the past, but I've learned from like how this industry works and how difficult it is for things to get off the ground. Like, don't talk about it until it's like happening. Like I didn't say anything about the movie because I was so worried, you know, we were going to do like a press release in like the weeks leading up to, and I'm like, what if something falls through, because stuff always falls through, right, and then like we don't even get a movie in the can,
right,
which does happen to people. So I would just say, don't talk about it, just go do it. Find good producers who are type A and have that kind of like mindset of how to run this like a business so that you can go off and make your crazy art.
That's a good advice. What's the biggest misconception about independent filmmakers?
That we're all pretentious. Most are, but some are like me, who are just like here to make a fun horror movie. And that's our creative expression. I'm not trying to win an Oscar, but make something that people think is cool, and that I find cool.
Is that the genre you want to stay in?
Yeah, I want to always be making horror movies, but I don't only want to be making horror movies. It would be cool to do something still genre. I don't see myself making like Manchester by the Sea or something about like estranged brothers in Boston.
Fall asleep while doing it.
Exactly. Like there would have to be like an alien or, you know, sea creature or something that shows up. So yeah, definitely want to stay in genre filmmaking for the rest of my time.
Okay, before we go, I want to know, what advice would you have given yourself before you went to film school?
I think about this all the time. I should have been more ambitious in film school and been like, let's just take this gear and like try and shoot a feature, even if it's bad. One thing I really appreciate about the NYU education, they did drill into you that you have to take this somewhat seriously, and it's a safety thing. You're dealing with long hours, heavy and expensive equipment, heavy and expensive lights. If you're doing something with stunts or something with makeup, that's like stuff that's going on a human being's body. You have to take that seriously. So that got drilled into my head, and I was very cautious, and I have been very cautious. And like, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it right. That said, I would give myself the advice that you and all your friends are like in college. You have very little overhead. Now, you know, trying to put this movie together, even though I was hiring a bunch of my friends, like they're all late 20s, early 30s, trying to like make a living in filmmaking, and you have to pay these people because it's weeks and months of their lives. But if I had done that back in film school, like
would have been free.
Yeah, you could buy your friend's pizza. I probably would have made a terrible movie, but I would say I would give myself the advice to like just go for it, but that's also sort of what I did at 31, just like on a slightly bigger scale when we shot this movie.
Yeah, must feel good. What is the biggest reward for you?
It's like twofold. Like it's pretty cool to do it with like people that you love and like do it with your friends. They lift you up, you lift them up because it's a collaborative medium. So like we all sit around and like look at the image and it's like you shot this beautifully, you lit this beautifully, you production designed this, the makeup looks so cool. This acting is so great. So it's cool like when it all gels and you can kind of see like where everybody did their best. For me, honestly, it's just like the bragging rights to all my other filmmaker friends who haven't made a feature yet. Is to be like, yep, shot the thing. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if anybody likes it. But it does feel like I've cleared a hurdle. And whether
Of course, not everybody makes a feature film.
Yeah, and I'd always said too, like I could really like see this one in my head. I really cared about these characters. And I'm still saying it, like if this is the only one I get to make, it's the one I wanted to make.
That's great, and I hope you make a lot more. Well, I want to thank you.
Well, thank you for having me
All
on.
right, of course, thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
You too, bye-bye. Okay, that's a wrap for today. If you have a comment or question or would like us to cover a certain job, please let us know. Visit our website at howmuchcanimake.info. We would love to hear from you. And on your way out, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with anyone who is curious about their next job. See you next time.